on YouTube. My name is, or it's just started now. I'll do it again anyway. Welcome to Stripping. Welcome to the Stripping the Dipping podcast live on YouTube. My name is Asaf Sagi. I'm your unlikely co-host, not your unusual co-host. I'm unlikely. I'm never gonna do that again, probably. With me is AMG Dens.
Hello,
Tell us about
guys.
yourself. Who are you? Tell us how you started podcasting.
Thank you, man.
Just
Oh,
kidding.
it's lovely
We're
to be on the
keeping
other
it chill
side.
today.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Loving the
you're on
accent
the
too.
other side today. I'm gonna lower my microphone because I'm gonna be louder.
That's okay, man. Well, whilst you're doing that, let me kind of do the kind of like
I'm good, but
synopsis.
yeah, go ahead, please.
So, guys, yeah, welcome to the Stripping the Dipping YouTube channel. As always, we're super happy to have you guys here. If you guys are in here as well early, make sure you drop a comment so we can get those on the screen, and make sure you drop a big thumbs up. Make sure you slap the like button like Will Smith. And yeah, just I have a very special guest on the show. Also, he's a great contributor.
You're the guest. You're the special
Hey,
guest.
well, yeah, true. I need to remember it's roles reverse today, but obviously he's a great contributor to the podcast. He's been a great contributor since its inception. His ideas, and even this today's idea was, kind of an idea birthed by him himself. So, with the fancy our accent today, even we have Asaf or
Yep.
yeah, I got it. Who's gonna do basically the questioning for today as well as my sim racing wheel goes a bit crazy, which is quite funny because that's actually what the topic of today is. So it's your idea, bro. You were thinking, sim racing is obviously a new thing that a lot of people are trying to get into these days. There's a huge esports following that's ever growing with a plethora of different personalities to follow as well. And what probably doesn't get talked about for a lot of people that want to get into it or maybe curious about it, it's the ins and outs of it really, and how a normal guy like myself from North London goes on to do things like this. So, bro, I'll give you the floor, man. And yeah, was there any other notes you wanted to say before I put the first banner up?
Yeah, I don't want full credit for this. The idea for this was birthed when you and I were driving. Well, you were driving. I was the passenger, which was awesome. We were driving to the Mercedes World Museum, and on the way, or was it on the way back? I don't remember, but we talked about sim racing. Me being a complete noob at it, I don't know anything about it. I was asking very basic questions. That was a few months ago, and I've actively tried to forget all your answers so that I can ask you this here. You were saying we're going to talk about the ins and outs of sim racing, but I think I'm going to start very basic. What is sim racing? What kind of stuff do you do? What do you need to get going? What sort of sim racing styles are there? Like really basic for people who don't know.
Absolutely.
Nil. I was going to cook.
Uh,
For people who know absolutely nothing about sim racing, and we'll build up from there and see like where we can get.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, shout out to our listeners inside here and watchers as well. We've got Abby. Shout out to Abby, lovely girlfriend, best girlfriend in the world. And also, we also have man like MJ, which again, really loyal dude as well, always coming and showing support. Ironically enough, in relation to sim racing. But to answer your question, bro, yeah, sim
We
racing.
can first admit that Abby's better than you at sim racing.
Maybe a F1 race stars, but maybe we'll just let her have that. But yeah, we're yet to get on the big boy stuff yet, so hopefully we will, and that's going to be even more interesting content that may or may not come out on the Stripping the Dipping channel if there's ever demand. So yeah, but
There is an AMG Dance channel.
pew, pew, pew.
Please plug it.
Thank you. Which is just AMG Dents, by the way, as well on all platforms. But to answer your question, which I think is a really pertinent one, yeah, sim racing is a virtual space for racing, and I know that sounds kind of very basic, and when you think of it, it could be anything from Mario Kart, it could be anything from like playing Lego races, it could be anything even from just playing Crash Bandicoot. I think for most of us, like sim racing starts from a place of having a PlayStation and playing Gran Turismo 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 for the newer kids on the block, the young whippersnappers, and essentially wanting that sensation of driving a car really fast on its limits whether it's on a track, whether it's on a fictional track with some bananas and red shells. Not quite sure if Red Bull have catered
Coming
for
to
that.
F1 2026.
Yeah, coming to FIA spec series soon.
Oh,
But yeah, there's
God.
there's so many things you can do, from rally racing to like oval racing. The world of sim racing has evolved and grown so much over the years that I wouldn't even know where to start. So I think that is kind of a melting point. And even for myself, like I mentioned, like, grew up as an only child, parents needed to shut me up. How are they going to shut me up? Bought me a PlayStation, wanted to play games. And the first game I ever got, I think, was F1 2000. It had Mika Hakkinen on there. It had, I
That
think,
was your first racing game.
yeah, I mean, I think I dibble dabbled in a bit of like Gran Turismo at like a cousin's house and stuff like that. But the first ever game I owned was like F1 2000. So even looking back then, it was just remarkable how you had Schumacher, you had Hakkinen, you had these pixelated cars and like little 2D graphics, and like Murray Walker's voice, God bless him.
Mm.
Every time he crashed into a wall, he's like, "Oh no, no, he's spun." And it made it such an awesome experience. And I just remember I actually like begrudge those days, in the sense of just trying to do all my homework just so I could have an extra 10 minutes to see if I could race as Michael Schumacher and continue to uphold his dominant reign during that period of time as well. So yeah, I mean, everyone has an entrance into it. You don't need to have a mega rig like what they have back at Brackley in Mercedes headquarters. You can literally just have like a PlayStation and a wheel, or even just like a sensor controller as well. There's so many things out there, as well as entry level kind of things into the world of sim racing.
So let me ask you this. What is the difference between, if there's a difference, between sim racing and like a racing game? Is there a difference between a simulator and
Mm-hmm.
a racing game? Because obviously there's a lot of overlap. There has to be.
Mm-hmm.
But where is the line drawn, if at all?
Great question there. And yeah, just to get into that one, there is quite a big skill gap between, simulator, really tricky, trying to basically emulate everything that's happening on the road with a race car. And on the flip side, of course, like more arcadey games, like let's say Need for Speed, for example, which again, we're not bashing it at all. There's a market that Need for Speed appeals to. When I was a kid as well, I had my kind of like bad boy kind of phase of street racing, and the Too Fast, Too Furious franchise was kind of linked into wanting to play Need for Speed and customizing cars. But yeah, it's all really to do with the skill gap, and I think the physics. With a game or arcade like Need for Speed, it's designed to be quite easy and for somebody to just be able to pick up and play, and just basically to progress quite quickly. Whereas the simulator now, it's really a great approximation of what a car would do and how it would behave in a particular circumstance and scenario. And the level of detail is so crazy, Asaf. Like, if you look at just like the level of detail, the amount of investment that these developers will spend to try and laser scan every single bump of every track, to take photos of every single corner, during summer, during winter, to see how the asphalt changes. They'll work very closely as well with like real factory racing teams, whether it's GT3, whether it's the NASCAR guys, whether it's the Formula One guys as well, just to collect data and just to kind of see if they can run those numbers and run those calculations into what will be something playable but very challenging and rewarding at the same time as well. So that's kind of the skill gap of the two.
That is insane to me. Like, if you think about Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator, they've basically mapped the entire world and buildings and everything. So that's like a very literal bird's eye view of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got all these like major details.
Mm-hmm.
And in simulators, you've got racing simulators, you've got details as granular as bumps in the road and fans and corners and everything. That's insane to me. That's an insane amount of work. So can you give us some names of these games slash software? Where does it stop where does it stop being a game, and when is it like a professional simulator? Give us some names, like
Yeah, absolutely.
what do we download, what do we buy? Is it something we can buy? What can't we buy?
Well, I mean, the Mercedes simulator is, I think, punching it, but even there are people that have crazy contraptions and DIY kind of like garages as well, where you've got kind of motion motors as well that move
Rogers.
with that too. So
Th-
yeah, so there
There was a name of a game slash simulator.
yeah, so there is Rogers, but also the ones that are more popular, I think, are iRacing. iRacing is one where like they work very, very, very well with a lot of the factory teams, even Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team.
Hmm.
James Vowles during the pandemic commissioned a division of the Mercedes F1 team to get off their lazy asses because they weren't building anything during the coronavirus, and basically to replicate the W12 in that year with the developers over at iRacing too. And it was such a really amazing partnership because Mercedes was saying that they wanted to use their ability and just their identity to engage with a younger audience that, maybe they're not of the age to buy the cars or not of the kind of place in life to be able to fly out and see the racing, but still to experience something behind the wheel. So they had done a lot of testing, and it had been from ex drivers like Valtteri Bottas that was part of that project as well. You also had the likes of Anthony Davidson, which is more on the sports car side now, but also he's a demonstrator driver for Mercedes F1 team, so he'll be at Goodwood and all the festivals. And also on top of that, they've got their own esports driver, which is the young Jarno Opmeer from the
Mhm.
Netherlands. He's dominating the world of F1 esports, which is something we'll talk about as well.
Yeah, I've seen him
And
upload videos to the well, not upload, but he's prominently featured in the Mercedes AMG Petronas F1 team's YouTube channel.
right,
Like
exactly.
before every race, there's like how to do the perfect lap with Jana Oakmere. Cool.
Which exactly that. So that was a project that I think a lot of people were very inquisitive about, but it worked spectacularly. Lots of people bought the car, lots of people signed up to iRacing just for that experience. Also, to shout out the other ones too, you've got the likes of Assetto Corsa Competizione. They're an Italian developer and they are run by a software company called Kunos. And with them, they have a really hardcore way about sim racing. They actually go to the GT3 series and follow the GT3 racing on the road for the entire year. They have data directly from Pirelli. So they've got one of the most complicated tire models when it comes to
Mm.
flex in a tire, how a tire will deflect on a curb, the characteristics of it on an
Wow.
outlap when it's cold, warming up, graining, blistering, all of these things, which, even to a noob like me, is crazy and it requires me to get somebody like Bryson to explain that kind of stuff. But just the characteristics of just a tire, which, when most normal people like me and you just drive our road cars, say, is it flat? No. Does it have a puncher? No. Okay, fair enough. It is good to go. So yeah, just like you've got them, you've also got R Factor too, which they do a lot of stuff with the IndyCar series, and I've even seen Roman Grosjean doing a lot of testing with Honda because they run a Honda power unit for Andretti Autosport as well. And, we all know that Roman Grosjean's not the best when it comes to street circuits. So he's spending a lot of time in the Honda simulator and a lot of like the American street circuits that we never raced in Formula One. He was going there and getting up to speed. So it's amazing just how you have all of these different platforms, and there's more. I could list them, and we'll probably do a separate episode, or when you're in UK as well, which is something we'll also discuss. Just like we'll probably do a review on all of them, and you can tell
I would
me,
love that.
like
I would love
just
that.
kind of the ones you like. But yeah,
The,
there's so much
the
on the
one
market.
thing, the one thing you said that I disagree with is you calling yourself a noob. Come on.
I still feel like I am, to be
You,
honest, man.
that's just when you become more and more proficient at something, you know you know more of what you don't know. So all the unknowns become known unknowns, and the fact that you're aware of it makes you more of a pro than a noob, I think.
Oh, thank you, man. Look at you burying me up on my own show. I love this. We need to get you on more, bro. We need to get you on more. We read some comments as well. Yo, shout out
Yeah, let's
to
do that. I
ZG
can't
as
see them,
well.
so you go ahead.
This amazing to have the support as well. And of course, we have Mary. Shout out to Mary too.
Mary.
Bit of a sad day as well, actually, on the eve of something that happened a year ago. But again, we can also look forward
Yeah.
to next year and hopefully things will progress and we'll see Lewis fight him back even more. Yo, speaking of the Magic Man himself, here he is, Mr. Black, Sir Blago.
F1 Blag, the unusual co-host.
You see, Black, he's doing an impersonation of you today, man. So I love it. I love it. It's like having a Blag
No,
that's
if
another
I
Blag.
wanted to do an F1 Blag imitation, probably would.
Mate, you're incredible
Sorry
at the
about that.
impersonations.
Sorry about that. I saw a comment earlier saying that Farming Simulator is the best simulator.
I mean, if you drive the W13,
There we go. Yeah, that one.
that might be fair. I think if you're driving the W13, that is comparable. So I can't even get onto MJ for that too much. So, of course.
What about the power wash? There's a new thing, right? With a power wash, that people clean stuff.
Yeah, like I think the W13 needs that because it burned my eyes for half a season. Just like that thing was atrocious, and it should never have been. Like it shouldn't have had a W or Lewis or anything to do with that outfit. But you know, sometimes you have to go through difficult roads to get to beautiful destinations. That's the positive outlook I'm gonna take on that one for sure. For sure. And Mary's
Are
giving
there
some
any
love
more
as well.
comments? No, I think Mary is the MVP of spaces. I'm sorry, Mary. Game recognized game. You are the MVP. You're always there. I'm a little busier than that. Sorry. Shall we crack on?
Absolutely, man. Go free. Go free.
Right. So you mentioned a few names like iRacing and
R Factor 2.
some more names.
Assetto Corsa. Bro, it's endless.
Yeah. So you seem to have like said this simulator is more with GT3 and this simulator is more with IndyCar. So is it true that most simulators are divided between like categories? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, bro. And I think it's the amount of detail and also the audience that they're after as well, to be fair. I mean, and it also depends on just kind of what you want to do too, because iRacing, for example, is just like, so it's a subscription based service where you sign up and essentially there's a plethora of cars, bro. There's Indy cars, there's F1 cars, there's GT3 cars, there's Mazda MX-5s, for God's sake. There's rally cars, there's rally cross, there's everything, you know. And the beautiful thing with that is that in a way you never get bored and they're always patching the game and bringing new updates too. So the W13 just dropped, for example, but that was paid content. So unless you're really into Formula One and you want to drive something that has the characteristics of a wheelbarrow, you're probably not going to spend $13 on that. But then having said that, you know, they give away a lot of free content too, in terms of tracks that are free. And also they've put like a Toyota GR86 type thing inside there, which is a cool touring car type thing where the racing is quite close as well. So you have services like that, which are like a one fits all type of shoe or deal, slightly more money.
It's more of like a racing platform.
Exactly. That's spot on.
Right.
Whereas,
you can race others. Is it a solo thing? Is there a campaign mode?
Yes.
How does it go?
So with iRacing, the beautiful thing is that its main selling point is that it's a multiplayer system, and actually how it goes about matching people is very intelligent and very like intuitive in the sense that you basically start off with a rookie license, and although you can buy the Mercedes, you can buy all the flashy cars you want, you can't race them online in official like racing sessions until you rank up basically and earn your stripes. So you can't be out there crashing people. You have to be patient. If you go off the track, you get like points deducted from your license. And basically the concept behind it is that you're supposed to drive cleanly. You're supposed to try and avoid as much contact as you can, and the less contact that you have, the more bonus you get for finishing races. And then it will try and match you with other people around the world that are of a similar skill set in terms of pace, but then also in terms of how friendly you are and your mannerisms behind the wheel as well. So it's really great for that. Sometimes it doesn't always get it, especially with multi-class racing, which is something I kind of ventured into a bit more with.
Well, like F1 versus Indy versus GT3.
Yeah, and even just you know doing the virtual 24 hours of Le Mans as well on iRacing. You know, we were a smaller GT Porsche, which is like a more kind of slower car. Then it was these crazy hybrid prototype cars that would just bomb down the streets. You know, and yeah, trying to stay out of the way of those things is easier said than done. So you know, it's amazing. So you have stuff like that, which, like you said, is just like a platform which everything's on, and then you have the likes of like, let's say, Assetto Corsa Competizione, which is just a GT3 simulator, and they only deal with the GT3 teams, and they've got the licensed liveries of all the teams, drivers like Raffaello Marcello and all the other great
Your
drivers too.
goat.
Oh my goat, or one of the goats, of course. And then yeah, on the flip side as well, you also have the official F1 game too. You have that, which is a kind of co-parented deal between Codemasters, which have been the developer and kind of producer of the game for many years, and EA bought a big proportion, I think practically all of the shares in Codemasters. So it's like an
Mm.
EA Codemasters type thing. And they're the only F1 game that has license for, ooh, I want to say 10 cars on the grid, 10 cars on the grid, 10 teams on the grid, in terms of like every single team, every single driver, every driver's modeled into the game. You can do a campaign mode as well, where you can pick any team you want and you basically pick the route of development for the car. So if for
Mm.
example, I'm doing kind of a championship with the W13. As you can imagine, the chassis is not really chassising,
Mhm.
and the other kind of deficiencies that car had. So at the beginning of the season, you can ask the guys in the chat. I was getting my ass beat senselessly, and even when I was kind of in a position to win races, I was getting mechanical failures because that also
Mm.
is a thing it tries to approximate, and also slow pit stops, which again Mercedes, ironically enough, quite notorious for. So
Yep. Yep.
there's loads of things like that as well. Safety cars can come in and like make or break a race, which again, considering what day it is, I probably don't want to open that kind of worms any further. But yeah, like everything you could imagine that happens in the real life Formula One world actually probably has happened to me at some point of me
Mm.
playing F1 2022, which again,
How's
that
your
is
race
like a
director?
halfway house. Well, yeah, well, even the race director. Did I tell you one time that I was doing a race and there was like a glitch? And this is the thing with like, and we'll talk about that, like things that could be improved with like sim racing games and stuff like that. Sometimes there's glitches. So there's one particular one where the race director didn't take into account that it was raining. And obviously when it's raining, like, the
DRS is
switch over to
disabled.
DRS
Yeah.
disabled and mandatory tire rule becomes completely null and
Mm.
void.
Hmm.
This kind of dodgy race director, which might be Michael Massey's cousin, we'll never know, decided to disqualify the whole top 10 because it didn't believe
Oh.
that we didn't change our tires, even though we didn't have to because the rule should have been disapplied.
Oh
So
god.
there are funny things like that, and at the time you can get annoyed because it's like, dude, like I'm trying to give my all into this, but then
Yeah.
just like in real motor racing as well, we see things happen and they're out of the bloom. So and yeah, with F122, it's a nice halfway house. It's an official F1 game, but it's not arcadey to the point where it's too jokey or cartoony. But at the same time, I still feel if they wanted to push the boundaries and make it a really hardcore simulator, they could go for that as well. So yeah, there's a real nice balance of everything on the market these days, which is lovely for people like you and I to try and get our hands on as well.
Yeah. All right. So obviously the F1 2022 game has a campaign mode,
Mhm.
and do the others as well, like iRacing the, and you mentioned something that was inside the AMG factory. Is that iRacing as well, or is it something like more custom built?
Yeah, so with Mercedes, it's a mixture actually of the two because
Hmm.
James Vowles, which is the Valtteri is James guy, did like an official podcast with iRacing, and he was saying that to keep the drivers sharp and just to keep team morale up, all of them have iRacing. Lewis has it, George has it, Anthony has it, Jarno has it, and what they do, I think it's every Tuesday, is they just pick a random track and a random
Hmm.
car, and they all just get together and race competitively, which is
Random
awesome.
car, as in not necessarily an
doesn't have to
AMG.
doesn't have to be AMG, doesn't have to be a
Oh.
W13. It could be like a MX5 around Daytona, for
Oh.
example.
Oh,
Or,
gotcha.
it could be an LMP2 car around the
Hmm.
full Nordschleifer for 7 minutes. So, like there's so many wacky contraptions they can do,
That's
and
awesome.
they've got access to that. But then also with Mercedes, you're right as well. They would have their own bespoke kind of software system as
Hmm.
well. And I'll kind of tease the question, but I won't get into it. That's almost where they test more of the data, and the correlation between what they see in a wind tunnel, for
Hmm.
example, and what they're trying to replicate on a track as well. But I'll
Hmm.
kind of thing. But yeah, just like, there's just so many kind of crevices in between. And even more so, Black saying we couldn't find dens after virtual Le Mans. Yeah, because again, like you just get so like entrapped in it, and it's almost like you are, and you go through the emotions. Because Mike Fowler, which is my teammate, he started the race. We avoided all the drama that usually happens at the beginning of a race, of course. He does like 2 3 stints, doing quite well. We come in, I jump in the car, first stint's fine. I'm saying these tires feel really good. Maybe I can save some time rather than pitting and changing them in the pits. Maybe I'll just put some fuel in, but I'll keep the tires. So I save myself 30 seconds in the pits.
Hmm.
I do that, and then I get wiped out by like an LMP2 that completely missed his braking point as he locked up his brakes.
Oh.
So lost 4 minutes in the pits, and for a second I thought what was going to be a race win was going to be taken away from us. So even though it's a 24-hour race, so it's just the highs and lows, and it really does, like, it encapsulates that feeling and that emotion of being part of a team and racing on the limit and fighting towards something, which is just amazing. So yeah,
Hmm.
there's so many things in there too, which
Ah.
just makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it really does simulate like things that could happen to you in real life. That's crazy. So I'm guessing that in those games and simulators, the cars are not all the same. Like if you pick an AMG, if you pick an Aston Martin, if you pick an Alpine, they're all going to behave differently based on what the developers have gathered throughout the season. Is that correct?
That's spot on, Asaf. And yeah, absolutely. So what they'll do is they'll obviously go to the preseason testing. They'll get a kind of baseline of where the cars are there. Then towards kind of like Silverstone, which is by the kind of marketing window, they try and flog the game out of the window to us. By then, like, we have an idea of who's up in the pecking order, who's below the pecking order. And yeah, you'll notice different traits with each car. So for the Mercedes, for example, not so amazing in the straight lines anymore because of the E10 biofuel that's come in this year. Also, the car was very sketchy, in low speed corners. So that wasn't great either. And they really tried to get that nature of that W13, like a car that's very hard to get
Hmm.
in the right window, spot on.
Yeah.
For example, if you take the Red Bull or the Ferrari, for example, more planted, more downforce, more confidence, you can kind of attack the curbs a bit more, and it gives you that, which is great too. And then
Hmm.
also, just even if we just take away the cars, even the AI are spectacular. Because, for example, Valtteri Bottas will be a bit more like, cautious. And
Hmm.
if you go for a move down the inside, he'll leave the kind of the space there. But then, for example, Max, in literally all of my Go Mode Championship races, I kid you not, bro, he tries to dive bomb me into turn one, or doesn't leave me any room on the
Oh
exit of
no.
corners, or plays DRS chicken with me. And these are all kind of things they script into, the game to make it more realistic and to catch, the personality. Yeah, I've even had it out with Alonso, trying to back me up into his teammate and do things like that as well.
Oh.
So it's funny, just like the lengths of
Oh.
details developers will go to put these things in there. And absolutely, like all the cars are different. So if you wanted to be in a Haas, for example, and your premise was to make Haas like a great team,
Hmm.
no matter how amazing you are as a driver, it will take seasons to get that car to be
Hmm.
like a really dominant car. But then also, if you play the game, if you get more immersed in it, there are like FIA like rules and regulation changes that you can vote on too. So let's
Hmm.
say, for example, you've invested a lot of money in the chassis department, and then there's like a rule coming in next year about there being a simplified chassis. Then you can spend all of your resource points from the practice sessions you do to help build that factory and build expertise going into the next season. So it's crazy, just the level of detail. And if you want to, so F1, for example, has like a story mode, whereas with like iRacing selling point is just more the multiplayer kind of just jumping on a line with friends
Hmm.
and playing with it. So there's
Is
that
there
too.
development? Is there development in iRacing? Like since you got
iRacing,
the car, or is it more like replicating what is there at the moment?
yeah, that's correct. It's more trying to capture what is at the time. But even that's interesting because in the GT3, for example, and it was funny because I always take credit for it. Raffaello Marcello, the GT3 driver, came onto the podcast early in the year. And when I asked him what is so special about the Mercedes AMG GT3 car, he said it's a car that puts a lot of emphasis on downforce. So clearly the iRacing guys were listening to that. And when they introduced it to the game, it was the car that had the most amount of downforce. You could take corners flat, the car was not really so erratic or like unstable around bumps. So the certain tracks it would excel really well at and it would do quite well. Whereas, for example, the Porsche, which is like, a rear engine car, for example, has completely different characteristics, not so great over bumps. Also, its handling characteristics change over a race as well, which is exactly like real life. Because as you imagine, if you've got like a car that's rear engined, you put loads of fuel obviously in the rear, it's going to make the car more heavy on the
Mm.
rear than it is the front.
Hmm.
So you'll get more like,
Understeering.
understeer. But then obviously as the fuel kind of like gets burned, the rear
Hmm.
will become more lighter and it will give you oversteer.
Mm.
So, you could set the car up almost one way, and then by the end of the stint, it'll be quicker than all the other cars, towards the pit stop or towards that kind of window. And that's when you
Hmm.
get onto your hammer time. So, yeah, it's crazy even this with GT3 racing, although there's not the opportunity to develop the car, like, because it's a spec
Hmm.
series, to be honest. Each and every single car has its own unique characteristics, and even just the sound and even just that. Like for me, I'm huge on sound and audio and how does it feel, how does it sound, and the mere fact they take microphones, they sample the engine notes, they try their
Crazy.
best to emulate everything is bonkers. So yeah, it's amazing. But then also, Asaf, just to answer this question too, like what do F1 teams use? Yeah, it'll be a mix, of their own bespoke kind of software they build. It will also be stuff like iRacing. It also might be R Factor 2, which is kind of
Mm.
what iRacing is, but it didn't quite get there. But still, it has its
So
own unique market.
R Factor 2 is like more high end
Yeah,
than
it
iRacing.
can be. And then also,
Hmm.
like, even with Assetto Corsa, for example, there's like the base version of the game, which became quite popular with the modding community on the PC. So, for example, the developers just made it and put like stock content in there. And then once people realize how they can change the files and manipulate the physics handlings and stuff like that, they started like putting loads of stuff inside there. So now we've got a great community of people that if a W14 came out next week, they take
Hmm.
pictures of it and then rebuild it in the simulator, which is just bizarre. It's crazy. So
Awesome.
there's
Awesome.
that. Mhm.
So, um, going back to the level of detail, when Alonso passes you,
Mhm.
does he give you like a finger whack? Is that implemented?
Well, actually, funny enough, bro, you mentioned that like there is like an animation. Sometimes if you hit a driver, you will see them raise their hand like this, like move, or also just like you get your kind of team radio engineer saying, "Ooh, that move wasn't so good. Maybe give back the position." And also you have to think about it too, because the way that they script the tire model in F1 games is degradation heavy. So if you sit behind in somebody's like hot dirt, yeah, although they've improved that this year, your tire wear will go through the roof, and you really
Mm,
have to pick your battles and decide whether or not you want to go toe to toe with Max into every single corner, or
yeah.
whether or not you want to try like maybe an alternative strategy and use your tire and use your battery pack, use the hybrid system to attack later on in the stint as well. You have to be so strategic because now they've made it where everything you do influences the outcome of the race, whether it's negative or positive.
Mm, crazy. Um, so you mentioned that iRacing gives you like their impression of the car,
Mhm.
but obviously the car, is being developed by the team throughout the year. Do they update their model? Are you stuck with the preseason testing W13, the Bahrain W13, or can you get the Austin upgrade at some point? How does that work?
Absolutely.
If it
Yeah.
does.
And I'm happy to answer that one as well because they do. Like, they're
Hmm.
very the one thing I'll give iRacing, I'll like people get onto it because it's the one that's the most dear. You have to pay the subscription. You also have to buy a lot of the cars individually. It's not the cheapest one to
Hmm.
run. If you're just used to buying a game and running it until the next game comes out next season, iRacing is not that. Let me tell
Hmm.
you. But like no, like the
That
attention
would
to
be like
detail.
a game like F1 2022.
Exactly, where it's just there for a season, it catches whoever the drivers are for that season, and it will try and touch on different things for that particular year, but it's not
Hmm.
something they ever evolve it's just kind of a static shot of what the cars were doing that year, and
Hmm.
they'll bring one or two patches here or there for something that's game breaking. But no, with iRacing, for example, they're very on, like making sure that the tire models are correct. We learned from the first race this year in Bahrain that these new 19-inch kind of like wheels, these Pirellis, they take a long time to get fired up into like operating window. So jumping in the W13 last week for the first time, I noticed that the car was very twitchy in the
Mm.
first initial laps, and actually sometimes you needed to do 2 warm-up laps just to get the car in the right window to go and
Yeah,
nail that lap and to have that confidence. So
very true
they
to
always work
life.
on that. Exactly. And even this as well, another thing I'll say is even the aerodynamic packages. So how, let's say, in Monza they run like a low downforce spec. In
Hmm.
iRacing, they'll have like a skinnier rear wing and like
Hmm.
less kind of like cooling packs inside the car, because obviously that creates drag and makes the car slower. Whereas if you wanted to go for full Monaco spec W13, you can visually see a bigger rear wing on the car. You can also see like more end fences on the side as well. So there's different aero packages you can mess around with. And even, let's say, one of the experiments I did was, how would an F1 car work around like the Indy 500 IndyCar circuit? And for that, like, I was like, surely you'd have to run a lot of downforce because of how fast they're going. But what I didn't appreciate when I did the experiment was how much downforce a Formula One car generates anyway. So I could run away with running a Monza spec W12 at Indy 500, which was, or Indianapolis, which is crazy, and
And that's an
that's,
oval, right?
yeah, it's just an oval, which you'd think that you'd need a lot more downforce to keep the car kind of like planted to the ground, but obviously the floor creates a lot of that downforce too. And when you're going at those speeds, you get like a Venturi effect, which is more exaggerated by these ground effect cars. So yeah, just to see that level of detail and just
That
to
sounds so
even,
much fun. Like to mix it
yeah,
up like that.
exactly. And even the damage model too, like we didn't know like how much like not having a front wing would make a huge difference, and then we
Mm.
watched the real life Formula One and we seen that, okay, if you lose part of your front wing, it still makes a difference, but it's not as catastrophic as like what we saw with Max when he had actually piece of the, I think it was Yuki Tsunoda's barge board or something like that
Yeah,
underneath, the floor, and like how much
yeah,
performance you lose from that too. So just the attention to detail is magnificent, man. And like,
yeah.
there's so many things. Like your mind, I think, is the biggest limiting factor with sim racing, which
That's
is
crazy.
such a cool thing too.
And probably free time.
Yeah, well, that too. And I'll touch on
Wow.
that in a later question as well, because on the esports side of stuff, it's crazy. It's
Can
absolutely
you give us a quick rundown
bonkers.
of what esports in racing looks like? How does one get into there? Um, what kind of benefits are there? And like, let's yeah, can we try and condense that into something
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
yeah.
More than happy to do so. And with esports racing, literally, just like how in Formula One, just like in GT3, just like in any sport, like the World Cup, for example, it's the best of the best. And, there's no compromises with esports. Like, I actually got invited out to do like an esports sim racing hot lap kind of type challenge where it was who could set the fastest lap on,
With
just
AMG,
one
right? That
shot.
was
Yeah,
from the
with
team.
exactly,
Brilliant.
with AMG in partnership with IWC
Lucky
as
you.
well. So I know, right? But I sat there with the guys from the team and I was asking them, for somebody like Jarno Opmer, the reigning F1 esports world champion,
Mm,
what does the commitment look like? And they were saying his commitment to us in his contract is 8 hours a day, which
mate.
is like a full-time job. And in this
Yeah.
kind of modern day era we live in as well, and
Add
because
another
it
hour
entails,
for lunch and you've got an wow, that's crazy.
it is, and the stakes are high for somebody like Yano too, because Mercedes want to invest in this space that is the esports world. Obviously, the more success they have, not only just in Formula One or road cars, the more success they have in esports, the more of an audience they could build in that regard too. It's promotion for them as well, And speaking of which, she got it on the arm as well, young IWC. If you want to sponsor your boy, sponsor the podcast, please do. But no, just like it's tough. And what I'll say with esports as well is, if you have the time, if you want to get into it, Formula One have a page dedicated on the multiplayer
Mm.
section to esports. So they'll usually do some time trials and you have to work your way through the trials and beat
Will
the
they scout
times.
for you?
They can do. They can do, which is also another thing as well. So
Ooh,
if you're like a content creator, but you want the opportunity, to do esports racing, make content, tag them in, like make interesting videos that's quite engaging, do challenges, do something which nobody else would do, because that's what's going to make you stand out to them. And obviously with the esports side of it, they want to try and get the fastest guys, and it's about just who would be the fastest guy if you put them in a seat. But also, from the marketing point of view as well, there are lots of like teams looking to work with, younger talents and people that can make sim racing videos and stuff like that, because ultimately they realize that Formula One doesn't just appeal to the billionaire soggy biscuits like Bernie Ecclestone, for example. It's moved to a much wider demographic, of course, of people that are young and interested, and want to kind of understand it, either from a sporting perspective, from a car performance perspective. There's so many things you can get wrapped into in the world of F1. So, absolutely,
that's insane. The pie just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
absolutely.
Um, so I have a question for you.
Mhm,
How do you know how good you are, and how do you get better? Of course,
mhm,
practice, practice, practice. But
mhm.
how do you know where to improve? What do you need to do? Do you have like a race engineer kind of sitting with you virtually and explaining things to you? Is it a real person? How does that work?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, there's a combination of things that you could do there. And I think for me, when I took like the leap of faith to actually get on the sim racing train during the pandemic, I bought like a bundle from a company called Fanatec. They've kind of been like one of the first kind of in the sim racing scene. And then I was just online. I was just looking for like, PlayStation 4. I didn't even have a PC. It's just like PlayStation 4 League Race. And there's one called Symphony of Pistons, SOP. That's where I got the trophy from. And yeah, like in terms of wanting to know how good I was, I just like went into the forum. There was like a kind of very self-explanatory page about how you can sign up, how you can register for races. There was 2 races a week, so there was a short 60-minute one, and then there was an endurance one, which could be anywhere from 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours.
Crazy.
Anything at all. You kind of had like a very big array of options. And then if you felt really confident, like I was lucky to kind of join in the first season. There was this like a league they did. It was every Tuesday. There was a set calendar that they would give to you at the beginning of the season. You had to pick a car, and once you picked a car, you had to stick with it for the entire season. And there were stewards that would review, the race footage, and a live commentary team as well. So wanting to know how good I was, wanting to know how I would stack up against people around the world, I signed up for it. And I actually met one of my best friends now, Mike Fowler, through that experience too, because we didn't know each other. We just kind of like in the same kind of league, and we always finished right next to each other. Didn't matter where he qualified or where I qualified. Always finished right next to each other, because he was faster but not as consistent, and vice versa. I wasn't as quick as him, but I was hella more consistent. I wasn't making as many, incidents or crashes or whatever. So, even through that, you start to build friendships. You start to meet different people, like through Quick Stuff as well, which I love the t-shirt, by the way. Big plug to Quick Stop F1 as well. Like I met individuals like Bradley Philpott, and they run like, not so much esports in terms of like competing, like really high stakes, but more just charity races where you sign up, you donate some money for your entry, and as a team of anybody you want, you come together and you race with other people who are in separate teams just to raise money for charity, which was like a sponsored event too. So you start to then see kind of like how you stack up against other people and where people are breaking. And the great thing with a lot of these, so it's not even just like one particular simulator that does this. The majority of them have really good replay features. So if there was somebody that was lapping a second quicker than you, or he was quicker in
Mm.
turn three, you can go back and play and look at the telemetry. Where did he break? Where did he turn?
So,
Where did he?
so you do get to see data of other
Yeah,
players as well as yourself, and you can compare
exactly.
the graphs and see like where you need to change something.
Exactly,
Ah,
so you've
brilliant,
got like
brilliant.
aftermarket apps as well, like Motec, which really tell you the kind of ins and outs and can show you on a graph where they broke, how long they trailed the brakes for to like, get extra rotation, what gears they're using through the corner as well. Because
Mm.
when you downshift, that can also affect the car. So yeah, it's crazy, just like the level of detail, and also yeah, if anybody's interested, I just tell them look up Brad Philpott, look up SOP Motorsport, check out also the Caribbean Sim Racing League. I know that sounds very kind of bespoke, but it's not actually just for Caribbean people, believe it or not. Like it was just like founded by some Caribbean, some Jamaicans, some Guyanese, some Bayesian people, but we have people from all over the world that take part in that too, and they race
Shout out
iRacing.
to Guyana.
Don't know. But yeah, just like it's gone international, bro, and
Mhm.
that's what I love and what I find so exciting about it now. Because I just used to just be like anybody else, like a consumer, just going on YouTube, just looking at certain people and looking at what they were doing. And I was like, I want to do that, but I want to do it in my own
Mhm.
style. I want to do it the AMG Dens in North London kind of way, and yeah, just like everybody has their own unique kind of thing or way of doing it and making content and sharing these experiences. And whether it's an alien like Yana Opmer, or somebody more like me, which has a 9 to 5, but I jump on here because it's a great escape. It does so much for that. So yeah, it's huge. It's really huge. And then yeah, just like what was the other thing you mentioned as well? Because I feel like I've been rambling on.
I was just wondering, like, to the average, introvert trying to get on sim racings,
That's
you
me.
know, um, so you become essentially your own performance coach. Like you look at the data and you have to like figure out what to do with it. Obviously, you can learn how to read those graphs. Following on these
Yeah.
content creators.
And
I
bro,
want to shadow.
I'm sorry to cut you there as well. What I'll say as well
Yeah.
is there's even like coaching schools now. So there's one called Coach Dave.
Esports coaching.
Yeah. So you've got
Cool.
esports coaching from the likes of James Baldwin, which is like the McLaren kind of world champion as well of
Mm.
esports events, to James Blakely. There's a lot of guys, which have got success in esports racing, and they offer tuition. And also as well, even just within some of the games too, like you've got like a kind of like audible coach, like a kind of like spotter that tells you where you're losing time, almost like
a,
Bono
a human
guiding.
that plays with you and is essentially like a spectator slash analyst
Yeah,
with
and
you.
then there's a
Cool.
computerized version too that does exactly the same thing too,
Mm.
called Crew Chief. So that's a free app that anybody can download, and it
That's
basically
awesome.
analyzes like your laps, and it tells you where you're weak, where you could go later on the breaks, how your tired management is, where you could save fuel and do lift and coasting. The possibilities are endless, which is just ridiculous.
All right, you've touched on a subject that's very interesting to me, and I'm sure to all the viewers. You said the coach is free. Now let's talk price. So F1 2022, I'm guessing, is around £60, $60 ish.
Yeah,
Is
if
that
you're to
correct?
buy it brand new, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. How much is iRacing per month?
So with iRacing, you could subscribe.
Ballpark. Ballpark.
Will Park, I do it on like a 3 month basis. And for that, I think it's about maybe $40 for the 3 months. So not actually
Mhm.
that bad. But then you have to buy some of the stuff as well. So
Obviously, like
W13.
a certain car. You do buy tracks as well?
Yeah. So some
Yeah.
tracks you
Okay.
have to pay. That's paid content as
So
well. So
basically, a lot of DLC downloadable content for iRacing. Um, let's talk gear. I
oh yeah.
think it's probably the sexiest of all subjects. Um, and I know you have a particularly interesting steering wheel. Can you show it to us, please?
Yeah. I'll
I'm not
unplug
going to
it.
get into prices if you don't want to talk about that, but do
Yeah.
show us your gear. Tell us, like, how much does one need to spend to get started? Like, not buy the
Yeah.
latest and greatest, but show us the steering wheel.
Yeah. So if you want to go absolutely crazy and like sim racing is life, you don't have a girlfriend yet, and you just want to basically go crazy, you could spend thousands. That's the top of the list, and I'll just say now as a caveat, you don't need to. For me, like, I just like the immersion, and I really love the Mercedes steering wheel. I always thought it was the sexiest looking one, on top of that as
Show it
well,
to us, close-ups, please,
of
please.
course. And actually,
That's a
whilst
gorgeous thing. Carbon fiber, am I right?
yeah, so it's got aluminium and carbon
Oh,
fiber as well. But yeah, just like basically
crazy.
all the buttons and knobs. So you've got your that's HPP. So that's the high performance powertrain mode for the engine. You've got
Oof.
the menus as well on this one. We're doing it back to front on the camera. So this is for the menus to control the dashboard. You've also got modes for the energy recovery system on the hybrid. So,
Hmm.
if you want
Wow.
qualifying mode, strat mode 2, if you want like just like a balance mode, so you don't use all the energy, you've got that. You've also got these rotary encoders, they call them. So they spin up and down and you can control the
Is
balance of
that
the
brake
car.
biased?
Exactly, spot on. So you got your brake bias, brake migration. So that's another fancy Mercedes thing they engineer to pitch the car whilst you're under braking.
Mm.
So rather than you manually having to change the encoder, you can electronically set it to change how much it
Hmm.
will brake the front or rear brake once you lift your foot off the brake pedal, and it just pitches the cars. You can get more understeer or less understeer or more oversteer. So that's a bit crazy too. You've got pit limiter, you've got DRS, you've got overtake, you've got the like the mark button for telemetry. So if there's a corner you're really struggling on, you can go back and look at a particular event in the data, which shows you what's going on as well. So yeah, huge shout out to VPG Sim who actually modeled this wheel, because my gripe was that I started on the sim racing journey, which I'll get onto in a second, and I was like, cool, like I love it. I want to spend a lot of time doing it. Who makes a Mercedes wheel? And there's just nobody in the market at the time. So
Ooh.
they're a very bespoke company and their customer service is immaculate. Like considering the amount of money I paid for it, like it was a
Is,
thing where I was
is your is your magic button shielded?
yes, it is. And that's actually on the back too. So there's actually two. And even then, you got one on this
Ooh,
side and then one
beautiful.
on the other side as well. And your dual clutch as well. So this is for the gears up and down. And then you also have
Look at that with a
the
port and everything. That's crazy.
exactly.
That's
So,
amazing.
and then you also have the
Right. So
clutches as well.
wow. So
So,
obviously that is for the most diehard of gamers.
of course.
But tell us if you can,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
what's a basic setup look like? Can I use my own desk? Do I need a gaming chair?
Mhm.
Do I have to like lean back and play like that? How does one like
Yeah,
get into it?
great questions there.
And
Go for it.
I've seen all the settings that you've got on your steering wheel, but how does one change them with a basic, I don't know, Logitech or
Mhm.
whatever kind of wheel? How do you need to use your keyboard? How does that work?
Yeah, and great question. And yeah, for kind of if you're getting into sim racing, what I'll say is you don't need to break the bank. Like sim racing, and what I love about it now is that it's a very competitive market due to the amount of like esports events that are now running and people wanting to get kind of like on the field as well. So even for like a really basic sub, if you're just talking about wheels or a wheel, a pedal, and then a wheelbase, which is the thing that basically generates like the force feedback, the
Mm.
bumps, the oscillations, and
So
stuff like
these are
that.
two separate items.
Yeah, so you've got
I see.
actual kind of like steering wheel and then a base it plugs into as well as the actual kind of accelerator and brake pedal. But yeah, if you're looking at like getting into it, Fanatec do an amazing bundle that's like £400, 400 to £600, I believe. If you really want to, if that's maybe a bit too much, you've got another company called Moser, I believe, and they do one called like the Moser R5 and R7, and it's like a direct drive. So, not to get too nerdy because we'll save this for another episode, but with sim
Please get
racing,
nerdy.
okay, let's get nerdy. Like, so with Fanatec in their higher spec wheels, they have something called direct drive, and direct drive is basically so you connect the wheel into the shaft of the base, and there's no mechanical parts that basically lose the frequency between what you're feeling from the game and what you feel in the wheel. That technology is a bit more expensive, but it will give you a more one-to-one feel with what you see on the screen. If you lose the back end of the car, it gives you more of a chance to correct it as
Mm.
well. So
It's like a
it's
faster response time.
there we go,
So
exactly.
what is not direct drive?
So the
What
opposite
is
of
the
direct
opposite?
drive is we have like fan and belt driven wheels. So what it
Mm.
is you'll connect the wheel or the steering wheel into the base, and there's a mechanical kind of gear which is a clog or like an actual belt which works on a pulley, and
Mm.
essentially the motor will vibrate and send frequencies into that belt or gear to give you the kind of feeling of like acceleration, braking, stuff like that. and it's just not as high fidelity, for example. So that immersion, that last kind of like
Mm,
tenth you're really looking for,
mm,
you might not feel as much. But to be honest, like I know a guy called JR Sim Racing. Shout out to JR. He's got the most basic Logitech G27. I don't think they even make that thing anymore, and it's just plastic. And he's one of the fastest guys I know. And you'd still whip my
mm.
ass with my 2 grand, setup or well, whatever it is. It's more than that, but I'll just say that anyway. So price does not matter. If you're really good,
Interesting.
if you're really talented, and you make the time, it doesn't matter what you run. This for me personally as a content creator, I was on the fence for a long time, and I was like, you know what, I want to invest in myself, and I want to have something nobody else has. So I took that leap of faith, and a lot of my close friends said you're an idiot, but you know, like still I went and did it, and it's got me so far. But yeah, you do not need to break the bank to go sim racing. The other questions you asked as well. So, do you need like like an actual gaming chair, or do you need like a rig? No. If you buy like a bundle, for example, the wheelbase will come with like a table clamp, so that will
Mm,
clamp onto any hard surface or desk. Obviously, the
mhm.
more rigid it is, the better consistency you'll have as well. So you have that
So
too.
don't buy the IKEA Linmon desk, which is practically hollow.
Well, you say that, but that's what I actually have now. Like, because the only
Oh,
thing missing from, I mean, it wasn't even IKEA. It was another kind of like low budget version of IKEA with like flat pack furniture. But I didn't
mm,
know how invested I was going to be in sim racing. So, I bought this like, a really cheap plywood desk. And that's probably the only thing for my original setup, which remains. I started off with a really cheap kind of beginner's entry level kind of startup gear or pack. And
mhm.
then after time I
Gradually.
changed I changed the pedals because I like the more like how would I say kind of, so with even with pedals there's like a science behind that, and you have like
Can you show
potentiometer.
us with the camera? Or is the camera not
The camera's
moving
fixed,
today?
so
Got it.
we'll do it another time. But even just with pedals, for example, you have potentiometer based pedals. So what it does is it takes the
Hmm.
position of where your foot is on the pedal, which
Yeah.
is cool, and
So it's
it's a
like
lot more
analog.
cheaper. Yes, spot on. Whereas in real life, and to kind of try and like emulate that feeling more of driving a car, the higher end pedals are what are called load cell pedals. So they use weights. And funnily enough, as weird humans as we are, humans find it easier to remember muscle memory than they do position. So
Mm.
I thought it was a whole load of bollocks, bro. I'll be honest with you. And I was like, no way. But then when I upgraded the pedals, I gained like 3 or 4 tenths of a second, half
Mm.
a second. So it's like,
So
shoot. Like,
yeah.
mhm,
So gear does matter in a way.
mhm,
And I think it was on this podcast, maybe the last or one before that episode. I think maybe it was F1 Blag interviewing someone, and someone brought up that George Russell doing sim racing during COVID, and
mhm.
like he changed a particular thing in the gear, and all of a sudden he's like a second or two quicker, something like that. I
Yeah,
may be wrong about the details, but so you may not need like the best wheel or the direct drive kind of thing, which is more about feeling.
mhm.
But if it's something that, but there are things that if you change them, they give you a certain more confidence in what you're doing,
Absolutely.
as in like with a muscle memory of where your foot is.
Spot
Mm.
on. And that's like on the actual hardware side of it, but then also in the software side of it too. Like the great thing with sim racing as well is you can adjust the force feedback, for example. So you can dial in how strong or heavy you want the wheel to be, how much
Mm.
resistance you want to feel, how much oscillation you want the wheel to do, if you want it to shake or not so much.
Mm.
You can also change the wheel of rotation. So do you want it to be really sharp, and any small kind of
Right. Yeah.
movement it kind of portrays that? Or do you want something more silky and something you can more
Hmm.
throw, and so it's very bespoke for everybody. And like you mentioned with George Russell, even in the game itself, so with F1 game, there's different things you could do to the setup of the car virtually. So you could run more rear wing, you could run more camber, you could run suspension differently as well. And all these things change the characteristics of a car and how it will behave over bumps, curbs, its acceleration out of corners as
Yeah.
well.
But
And
I was
that's
I was talking about more of the rig
and the yeah, well,
itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and for the rig too. Yeah, absolutely. So for the rig itself, if you have like a direct drive, you're going to get more sensation. You're going to be able to, kind of feel the finer details that you
Hmm.
probably wouldn't get through just like a normal kind of setup. But having said that too, if you're just jumping on to have fun, if you're not looking to kind of do esports races and spend 8 hours a day, behind the wheel, then it's not going to make a huge difference, And I,
Got
I
it.
myself wouldn't tell, as somebody that's gone through that, if you're looking for time through stuff like that, it's in the gear to an extent, and then a lot of it just becomes how much time do you want to spend,
Just flourish.
Exactly, So yeah.
Oh, crazy. Um, let's see. Um, yeah. So when you're driving,
Mhm,
when you're going around a circuit, let's say it's a practice session, yeah, not a race.
mhm,
But you seem to be like maybe losing your rear end, going into the corner or something.
mhm.
If you want to practice just that corner, can you do that, or do you have to like complete the lap every time, or can you like start at a certain position and like do that like 50 times in 5 minutes or something like that?
Well, iRacing gonna love me, and iRacing, I want you to retweet this as well. But the jokes aside, but no, in certain simulators you can do that. For example, F1, the F1 game has always actually had like a flashback feature because it's an
Mm,
arcade game, and they know that things happen, and the AI can be quite derpy at times, or you
mm,
might want to try something a bit different as well, try different lines. So it's a flashback kind of like feature, but it wasn't necessarily
mhm,
designed for that purpose. But you can do that. iRacing have kind of taken that and gone a step further in the latest build of the game, or sim even, I dare say game before people kill me, and that is called active reset management. Even with that, essentially what it does is you can pinpoint the
mm,
moment you start a corner and the moment you end a corner, and then you can set a delta before and after too, and then you can hot map any button on the steering wheel, on the pedal,
mhm,
on the keyboard, and if you want, to your heart's content, you can continue resetting the same corner at exactly the same speed and exactly the same conditions. So you can try different lines, you can get
mm.
your consistency better. And I think it works so well because in iRacing, for example, you've got the full Nordschleifer, like the full, like I think it's like something ridiculous, like 15-mile, 17-mile circuit, which takes about 7 minutes to complete in like a GT3 car or something,
Can you do the
pushing
Monza
on the
baiting
limit.
in an F1 car?
Yeah, exactly. And even then, just
And
like,
like die every time?
exactly with the car bumping up and down on the bump stops and stuff like that. But yeah, you can do stuff like that too, and it's amazing because now there's less of an excuse for finding that perfection, finding that extra tenth of a second, nailing that perfection,
Yeah.
which is, what
Hmm.
will make the difference because I jump on and I do the iRacing races. And whilst I'm competent enough to be at the front, trying to keep up with those guys, those pesky young peddlers that, like they just find time everywhere. You really, really have to drive the car on its limits, but also you have to pick and choose how you want to use the tire. And that's something iRacing have said in this newer build of the sim that's coming out, I think tomorrow.
Mm.
They've made the tire wear more aggressive and they've made
Oh.
tire heat more of a thing too. So if you start sliding the car and drifting the car out of corners, you overheat the corpus of the tire itself, and then once it gets beyond a certain temperature point, you can't get the grip back, and the car just continues sliding, and it gets worse
Ooh,
and worse. It's like an echoing
painful.
effect, exactly.
Ah.
So you have to be very selective and have like a very adaptive driving style. And I've realized that because if you have a teammate like Mike, for example, you're playing one simulator 1 minute and then another simulator the next minute, and it's whatever's the hottest cake at that time. That's what he wants to play. You don't want to be, or have the fear of missing out to say. So
Mhm.
yeah, it is crazy even with that they've mapped that into some of the simulators now. So if you want to practice a particular corner until you get spot on, you
Yeah,
can.
that would be definitely something that I would be doing because I want to obsess over that, like to get it right, and I just can't be asked to wait 2 minutes to get there again. Um, Talking about tires and everything, do you do your own strategy when you're playing?
Absolutely.
And does it differ from software to software?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question
Can
again,
you hand
Asaf.
that control over to the computer and you're
Mhm.
just driving? And can you go Charles Leclerc mode where you just like
Just rely
have
on
no input at all?
the great. I like that analogy. But yeah, you could do either. Because for example, on iRacing, let's say, essentially you can go inside the garage after you've been on circuit and see what the tire wear has been like and look at the lap time and see if there's been any drop off in performance. And like what I said with me and Mike, when we do the endurance races, for example, what we'll do is
Is that
we'll just
after the fact? After the race?
yeah, like well, even when we're just in a practice session, or like when we simulate like what race day will be, for example, and the temperatures and stuff, like we noticed that during summer, like when they simulate the hotter races, it's hard to get away with like not changing tires. So in the GT3, like it's up to you whether you want to change the tires or not. But sometimes it's quicker to actually change the tires and have the performance to push. And other times, the time it would take you to change all four tires, which is like 30 seconds, you could save by just managing the tires and like, eking out the performance gradually throughout time. So what me and Mike did for the 24 hours of Le Mans, for example, is he went out during the daytime when he was going to be driving. I went out during the nighttime when I was going to be driving. And we realized that although we have slightly different driving styles, he was good with the tires, but then in the second or third kind of like stint after pitting for fuel, the tires completely fall off the cliff. And we needed to change the tires and implement that
Mm.
into our strategy. And that was data that was quite useful. Whereas for me, during the night, like the tire temperatures were a bit more cooler. So, and also with me, I'm not as aggressive with the way I point the car into the corners. So I was able to do maybe 4 stints of coming in, putting in fuel, going out, coming in, putting in fuel, going out,
Mm.
coming in, putting fuel, and not changing the tires. And the tires are just like a never done like chewing gum. They're just there forever. So you've got that side where you can micromanage it to a T, and you can see how it plays out on race day. On the opposite side, Formula One, for example, F1 22, you've got basically simulated uh, track sessions. So there's one which is like track acclimatization, where they just send you out and you have to drive through a slalom of gates to make sure that you know where the apex is of every corner. But then also there's another one which is tire management, for example. So you drive, and every time you get oversteer or you drift the car or you get wheel spin, it detracts and shows you a graph of the tire overheating and starting to lose grip.
Mm.
And then what it
Kind of
does
like
is
in F1 Manager, is that right?
yes, spot on. And then what it will do,
So
Asaf, is
you've got for those who never played it, you've
Mhm,
got like a graph just like what Pirelli does
mhm,
at beginning of each race on
mhm,
TV. You've
mhm,
got like the where you start, when you change your tires, and the predicted strategies. Only in F1 Manager 2022, you've got like those keyframes, but you've got like a graph,
mhm,
and you can decide when in that graph of degrading performance you're going to change your tires.
mhm.
So please continue.
Yeah, and it works like thank you for that too, because you're giving me an alley oop here. That's exactly how it works too. So you'll do 3 laps, and then it will measure like how your average speed was, what were your handling characteristics like in every corner. To did you drift? Did you lock the tire? Locking up a tire as well damages it as well. And essentially, at the end of it, it will show you whether or not you could have improved compared to what Lewis is
Mm.
doing. It will tell you, if you've been too harsh with the tires at the beginning of a stint. It will tell you, if there's things that you can do differently to be more soft or more aggressive. And it takes that data and it calculates the strategy for you on race day. So say, this is
Mm.
the recommended tire wear based off of what we've seen you do. Obviously, if you want to think outside the box and do your own thing, you can, which
Hmm.
is so unique as well. So it does it in different ways. And if you want to be the guy that's more kind of like I'm gonna do my own thing and run the show, I don't trust the Ferrari mechanics or engineers, you
You're
can
the
do that.
Carlos Sainz.
Exactly. Just taking your own initiative, which is a great thing to do. But if you just want to jump in and you just want the computer to kind of like dictate the narrative, you
Hmm.
can program that in the start of like the engineer in F1 22 gives you an iPad and you can just select the strategy you want. And
What
then
was that on the iPad?
yeah, so like
So
on
alongside your PC when you're playing?
as in no, so in the actual like game is or sim
Oh, sorry,
itself.
sorry. I thought it
So
was
you
like using two devices at the same time.
so but similarly, like you're on the grid and then the mechanic will give you the iPad and it will show you
Okay,
what your
got you.
strategy is. And then let's say if the temperatures get cooler and the tire wear is not so aggressive, the engineer will come on and say, "Oh, we've looked at the tire wear and it's actually not so bad. Do you want to stay out and have a look at this alternative strategy?" And it will come up
Mm,
in a pop up like notification,
right.
and then it will show you, do the undercut, come in
And
here,
then you
or
go, Lando, no, I know what I'm doing.
exactly,
All
and then
right,
don't pit
cool.
for inters a couple of laps later. So there is that too.
So you can
There
like
is that too.
accept, decline, change things on the fly. That's cool.
Exactly, which is so awesome, and amazing just to see too. So, yeah, this the flexibility of it all, bro, is phenomenal, and there's so many different options out there. And even for me, for example, in like the Goat Mode Championship, there's been times where they've said, "Yeah, we think that you can do the undercut." I'm like, okay, and then I come in, for example, and then the undercut would have worked, but
Mm.
then they gave me a slow pit stop.
Ah,
So the time I would have gained doing the undercut, I've had to make up anyway. And then by making the
mm.
time up and pushing really hard in outlaps, for example, I've overheated the tires now. And then I'm kind of stuck in this DRS train. Another thing, a DRS train is a thing as well in F1 games too, where you see the AI stuck in trains following one guy. Because let's say somebody like, the Williams, for example, they're running a really low downforce setup. And the Williams is a really fast car in a straight line in F1 games. So you also have to think about that too. If you're going to take an engine penalty and do an alternative strategy at a place like Spa, you might be able to overtake, but then will you be able to get ahead of like Williams or even a Red Bull that has superior top speed? So all of these things you have to take into account, and maybe take a click of rear wing out, maybe take some front wing out, maybe run a different like configuration of the front wing as well. So it's crazy just the amount of stuff you can play around with and do.
That's crazy. So in that regard, can you play along with someone who's gonna be your race engineer and tell you what to do, or talk like a real person? Like, let's say sorry, you're doing the driving, and I just want to be your guy in the chair. Is that possible in any way?
Yeah, so not so much with Formula One because it's more just related to a more casual audience. But with iRacing,
Mhm.
for example, you get real time telemetry. So there are like in-house telemetry apps you can use. There's also third-party apps you can use, and it will show you kind of like just like how the FIA have like a control room, and it shows you the track, the cars on the track, what numbers, who pitted, what was the time they took to pit, what tires they're on, and stuff like that as well. It gives you all that information. So, for example, Brad Philpott, again, I'll reference him. He's got an entire team, and they'll feed him information. His teammates will be telling him what sectors he can be quicker in. They'll be telling him and feeding him information about whether or not they've changed tires, whether to take new tires, whether, to go short, go long on a stint, and stuff like that as well. So you can play collaboratively as well in that sense
That's
too,
awesome.
if you really want to.
I do, and I want to be your guy in the chair.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah. We're nearing the end of my questions. At which point, I think we'll give the floor to anyone still watching. So, has sim driving improved your real world driving?
Absolutely. Spot on there, Asaf. Yes, I would say it has, because with sim racing, it almost becomes instinctive, in terms of when do you go for a move? How do you position a car? When do you kind of like how you read a car's body language and the driver's body language? And even like I was saying, they programmed the AI in F1 2022 to be like the real life drivers. So, for
That's
example,
crazy.
Max, I know sometimes what I have to do to him is run him off the road deliberately. Sometimes what I have to do is genuinely turn later into a corner just to make sure he gets a bad exit, just so he can't overtake me on
Mm,
the straight, you know. And just taking that into the real world, because you were kind of a big part of that as well when I took part in the British Rental Car Championship. Even though I wasn't the fastest guy there, and I say
which
that
was
because I didn't have
actual
the track
racing,
time.
by the way, on track
True.
with Brad Philpott.
Again, name dropping him in there. But yeah, just like, it definitely did, because the one thing he said, which was quite good about me, was bear in mind, I only had a day's notice. I went there literally the day before the event. And he said, even though obviously there's time to be made, in terms of your fundamental understanding of where to brake, where to turn in, you didn't crash. You're literally within half a second or like 3/4 of a second of the fastest guy here. Like all the mechanics and stuff like that you've learned from sim racing, you've been able to apply in the real world, which for me I took as a credit because he's a real life driving instructor coach.
Yeah.
So that helped. But then also as well, even if I don't use myself, I can also use like the real life racing drivers as well. For
Hmm.
example, as part of the GT3 Championship, they've got a thing now where in partnership with Fanatec, they're kind of like hardware kind of supplier. Um, the real life GT3 drivers have to race in virtual races with each other, and the points from those races go towards the actual championship, which
It's
I think would be
crazy.
pretty cool as well. I mean, I guess Uncle Alonso probably wouldn't be too happy about that because I think sim racing's behind his kind of like era. But it's cool that actually real life drivers are having to actually adapt and having to learn and having to actually see how sim racing can improve them, how stuff that they learn in the simulator they can try. Another thing that we haven't touched on as well is how they will try and theory different setups using the sim before they go to the track.
Mm.
If they want to know if a high downforce setup would work compared to a low downforce setup, they would A and B to they would take the same driver, get them to do 3 laps in each configuration, and see where the car was stronger on each one. So there's so many kind of parallels between the real and obviously the simulator kind of like world. Of course, just to shut the kind of the aunties out there that will nag, because there are people that will be like, but it's not real. Of course, like there's no substitute for real life racing, and I think all of us, bro, we've even said, we've got to do a road trip next year, get on a circuit, and just get that smell of fresh gasoline going through our lungs. Probably not the most healthiest thing to do,
I
but we
saw
need
CLA the other day, by the way.
that.
I was
But
thinking about you. So,
ah,
to that effect, are you ready to jump in the race of champions this year and beat Sebastian Vettel?
hey man, I just be following in
It
Brad
happened last
Philpott's
year.
exactly, and I think Brad Philpott that did that a couple of years as well. So it's not out of the question. And again, this is exactly it. These sim racers and these esport drivers, they're really starting to blur the lines of what is, somebody just playing a game behind a wheel and, somebody that's actually there, that could trial different things for a team, and develop a car kind of within a virtual compound. Because unfortunately with Formula One, like they've tried to make things a bit more fair, but in doing so, we don't get as much testing. So how are you going to
Yeah,
test?
yeah,
You're going to have to do a lot of stuff virtually, and
true.
as long as you can get the kind of correlation in the data of what you see in the simulator to what you get on the track, which is what they do a lot in the free practice sessions, then, that distinction between real and virtual, I think it's a synergy that will become closer and closer as time goes on. So I'm really excited I got into it now, but also like there's going to be a next generation of people that are going to completely wash the floor with me, and they're going to be the future, and it's going to be such a big thing, bro. Because when I was a kid, yeah, there was like a couple of esports tournaments in America, but it's not to the level where somebody can sit in their bedroom like me and just like spend a couple hundred quid on a wheel and some pedals and like a monitor or a TV, for example, and just race with some friends, and see who's the fastest and kind of like build on from there too. So it's amazing, man.
Hmm. Well, the last question I've got for you is, what music do you listen to when you race?
Ah, great question, man. Ooh, it's a mixture, because it really depends. I mean, for the like endurance races that I do with Mike, if it's like a whole 6 hour, 12 hour, like I don't know, I've listened to a bit of Afro beats, listened to a bit of reggae, listened to some R&B, some slow jams. This gets me, calm, cool, collected, and yeah, I'm just like, I can take my time, I can massage these tires like Sergio Perez, like it's beautiful. But if it's just like 60-minute sprint league race, every man for themselves, then yeah, no, sometimes I've just got straight face on. I'm listening, to some hard rock music, some Led Zeppelin, some Chili Peppers, some Coldplay, some Foo Fighters, just ready to just mess some stuff up. Or even just some like heavy kind of like drill, some North London kind of like music as well. So yeah, there's just like a mix of
I don't know
everything,
any
man.
North London music. You'll have to introduce me.
Man, well, you're coming to London in January, bro. So we've got quite the ordeal to show you.
Yes. All
Yay.
right. Let's open the floor to our viewers. Do we have any comments we want to reply to?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I'll just put some funny ones up here.
Yeah, let's
Anyways,
do that.
so Den spending 5K on this himself, and he still sucks. Screw you, Mike. Screw you. No,
Uncalled for.
yeah, I know, right? Unprovoked, but that's a Red
Yeah,
Bull fan
remove
for
that.
you.
Put that away. I want to see something else.
Oh gosh, we
No
got
one,
Abby.
no one. This is my goat.
Thank you, bro. Abby saying he wants to stream it so everyone can see me crash. Yep, that'd be beautiful. So now I can take the pressure off me. So hopefully, guys, slap the like button and also get a hashtag get in there, Abby. Let's get a hashtag get in there, Abby. If you want Abby to start sim racing too, I'm gonna start a trend. Let me get that hashtag get.
No,
Oh
no,
wait.
no. I think Abby deserves like a more Max Verstappen-esque kind of hashtag, like "haha, yes, boys, this is good" kind of thing.
Could you imagine, or just like what do you say? Simply lovely, like when he's doing the whole British thing as well. So, but yeah, just let me ask you some questions as well, bro.
Lovely,
Like,
lovely pit stop. That I think he
oh,
had that
oh,
recently.
yeah, was it Austin when they gave him the really shocking pit stop? And still, the car is so OP, like he still managed to overtake Lewis from like 10-second pit stop. So yeah, it's nuts.
What else have we got?
Let's see. I saw Nia inside here, so shout out to Nia as always too. The thing I love with Nia, and she's just been on this journey from day one of the podcast, just like yourself, bro, is that it doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether it's sim racing, whether it's FIA and their shady tactics, whether it's about fashion and motorsport. Like she'll just like tune in, she'll show love, and she'll always be inquisitive to learn more. And we do love that energy here at Strip the Dip. So huge shout out to Nia as always, just being amazing. And yeah, just like there's just amazing stuff as well that you guys do as listeners. So please continue to support this platform, because it's you guys that make it, and we want to get more of you guys on here too. But also, Asaf, let me go on to you, bro. Like, with all this new information that I'm giving you now, would you make the jump? Can we see you in a simulator anytime soon?
Heavens no.
Come on, come
No, I
on,
just
give
I
the people
just
what they want,
can't
bro.
have another hobby. I have
Bro,
too many of them already. I will
bro,
tell you one thing though.
go on.
Yesterday,
Mhm,
I was going through my YouTube Watch Later playlist, which I actually use.
mhm,
Um, and there was a video called "The Cheapest RC Car." Is this the best cheap RC car?
mhm,
It's by this Australian, I think, a chap named Matthew Sim, double M.
mhm.
And I was really impressed with that RC car, and I just fucking ordered. Sorry,
Bro,
fucking
it's
ordered
fine.
one.
It's past 9 o'clock, man. Kids should be in their
All
bed.
right, all right. Well, it's 11:30 over here, but yes, I just bought an RC car. I have a drone. I have my photography business, not business. I have my dog. I have woodworking. I just can't spend any more time in front of a screen doing that. And we chatted before the stream started. I started like playing F1 Manager 2022 when it came
Mhm,
out. I've done 2 weekends as the game works on
mhm,
weekends. It's like an actual calendar,
mhm.
and I had a lot of fun, but I haven't found the time to get back into that yet. So if I'm going to be coming back to that, to any F1 related or racing related gaming, it would be F1 Manager.
Mhm.
If only to see my Felipe Drogovic take onto the track.
Hey.
I chose the Aston Martin team. You know this, but I'm telling everyone else. Chose the Aston Martin team. Uh, started obviously with Vettel and Stroll, but I hired Felipe Drogovic to be my reserve driver or third driver, whatever. And my plan is to fire Stroll
Oh.
in the next season
Oh.
and get Drogovic in there. So yeah, I would have done it earlier, but it costs more money to do that, which is weird because he's my son, Stroll. So yeah, basically, no, sorry, I might crack. Anyway, yeah. So if I'm going to be doing any more of that, it's going to be more on the F1 Manager side to see how to try and develop that. And I'm going to hone my strategy skills there, and then hopefully play with you as your race engineer.
Oh, we love that.
That is my goal.
We love that, man. And there'll be more racing as well. Speaking of which, we got this terrorist Mike in the chat just trying to trigger us, but we're not putting those on the screen. Screw him. And shout
No,
out
no,
as well
no.
to
None of
to
that. None of
MJ, which is sticking it on him, by the way. Love that. But yeah, just it's interesting just to see, man. And you say that, and like obviously, I respect that you have so many hobbies, man. So you got to do what you have time for. But you will see, just
Oh,
like it will start off as one thing, and it will just get you more and more and more and more. Even if
I will
it's
say that.
Mhm,
I will say that this chat and the chat that we had before,
mhm.
it's given me so much more appreciation to sim racing and esports than I could ever imagine I would have. Because you know, a lot of people look at F1 and other races categories, racing categories, as in people in fast cars doing vroom vroom in a circle, whatever, and they don't think of racing drivers as real
Mhm.
athletes, and to you derive from that an even more cynical look at esports. Oh, you're just pushing a wheel on your office chair or whatever in front of a screen. You're not even like driving the real car. You're not feeling the g-forces. But there's a lot of skill to that, and there's a lot of luck as well, and randomness and development that goes into that. With iRacing, it's a different challenge. You're stuck with the W13 that is an absolute dog, and doing F1 2022, you can develop the car as you please. You can make a Ferrari shit. You can make a Mercedes, challenge the Red Bulls, and it's a different challenge. And as you said, you're not just driving the car; you're actually steering the team in a way. So, the way I see it, F1 2022, the racing game, has a little bit of a management
Yep.
side to it, and the F1 Manager 2022 has a bit of a strategy slash even some sort of racing side to it, because you're giving the drivers actual orders and they can't really disobey you. During a session, you can tell them push more, harvest, whatever, all these things. Oh no,
Yo, webcams.
we've lost my
I was gonna
video.
say,
I
no,
think my camera might have overheated.
it's melting.
Shit. Maybe that is our cue. Anyway, yeah. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Oh, let me just try and fix the camera thing. But
Hey, well, I'll stall
I don't know.
until you fix it, man. Hopefully, you can get it back up again because there is
Yeah,
something
please
else we need to
continue.
allude to. But yeah, I'm really happy you said those things as well, bro. Because that's the thing as well. I was curious. Like I've always loved racing games. Like I said, I've been playing them since I was a kid, so it's always something I wanted to do. But then, like you mentioned, sim racing, it just opens up a whole new plethora of things you can do. And there's something in there for everybody. You don't have to spend 8 hours a day trying to be the next esports world champion to enjoy sim racing. You really don't. If you want to, like, have like a JDM, like, Toyota Supra and run it on, like, the highway of Tokyo, there's a simulator that can allow you to do that with one or two modifications which are free. If you want to test the W13 and you really want to see if it's as bad as Lewis and George have said it is, you can do that. If you want to actually influence that and you actually want to be the one steering the narrative, you can get the official game and you can pick whatever team you want, and you can do it that way too. Even in the F1 game, it's actually like a my team like mode too. So you can basically pick your own team. You can pick your own engine manufacturer. So you can pick Renault, or which is basically Alpine, Tag Heuer, which is basically Honda, Ferrari, Mercedes, and you can pick your own sponsors. You can pick whatever drivers you want. But to begin with, like you don't have the budget to get a Lewis Hamilton, and also Lewis wouldn't come to the team because you don't have the infrastructure built yet. So you have to build your way up, and like basically go for like the F3 drivers and F2 drivers, which are also in the official F1 game. And then as you get more success, you can decide whether you build an attachment to them and you build them to be the next world beater, or whether or not you want that huge big money signing like a Lewis in your kind of like fantasy team as well, with your own livery and stuff like that too. So just that's what I love about it, man. Like the freedom that you have is unsurmounted. I don't think that there's ever been a time like now where there's so much you can do, and it's not going to stop. It's just going to get more and more hectic, more and more crazy. So I'm here for it, and I'm glad as well that we've got you into it, even though it's more on F1
Oh.
manager. But we'll get you into the sim racing side and the management side of sim racing too, because there's an element of that that definitely comes with it. And man, just thank you as well for hosting and chairing this one as well, man. I know you're still trying to fix your webcam, so whilst you're still
Yeah.
doing that, let me also segue onto another thing that we have. Guys, at some point, we haven't got a date confirmed, but Asaf will be back with us as well for that. We will have a winter quiz. So I'm just here to tease you guys about that. But we will be doing a quiz, hopefully before the end of the year. We'll be basically doing a quiz based on just moments of the season, some trivia, maybe some moments in the podcast too. So you have to listen back to a couple of our podcasts and see if you can work out some of the answers. But yeah, we'll be doing a quiz at the end of the year. Azaf will be here, so make sure that you go and you stay in tuned with Stripping the Dipping, obviously here on YouTube, obviously on the Twitter page as well, and obviously go and follow Asaf as well, man, because he's an amazing guy. He's gonna be doing some more content. I hope. I really hope. Say that with an evil look on my face because I really want him to. He's my broski. You're gonna be in
Oh.
London soon as well, man. So we're gonna be chopping it up as well. And yeah, just like it's really exciting times, man. I mean, there's still a couple of months before the F1 season, so we'll have to try and bide time somehow. But man, like it's still fun, and there's so much to look forward to. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 pence, bro. But I know it's still struggling with the webcam, bro.
Yeah,
So
it's not going to work.
oh
I lost the
no,
battery and now it won't reconnect.
oh man,
What a
okay.
way to end the show, huh?
Oh man. Well, bro, I'll let you have the final word anyway, man. And thank you as well. We need you. Actually, I'm hoping that this is gonna build your confidence, to join us for more episodes, whether it's on the YouTube
I'd
live or
love
whether
that.
it's on the pre-recorded side of it too, man. Because it's great to get another perspective, and to have somebody to have like ideas to bounce off of as well, man. And you ask really intelligent, like actually like meaningful questions as well, which people want to know. So that I think if Georgie sees this, when she does see this, she'll be immensely happy and proud of too, man. So
Well, I'm
thank
happy
you.
my camera doesn't work because I'm blushing over here.
Got him. Got
You're
him. But of
hyping me
course,
up way too much, mate.
bro, you deserve it, man. You're one of the realest. And like I said before, you, Nia, MJ, Abby, Mike, the troll, just like everybody in here, the amount of love and support and stuff they do
Blag.
black. Well, you basically were black today, man. So I'm sure he's gonna have a field day as well watching this back and hearing your nice and not so casual impersonations of him. But yeah, man, thank you so much, bro. Thank you.
Thank
It
you, and
means so
thanks
much.
everyone to tuning in. It's been lovely. I've enjoyed being your unlikely co-host, and yeah, I'd love to join in the future.
We'll make it happen, man. And hopefully even before the end of the year, we'll get you on as well for the end of year quiz. We'll do as well the winter quiz,
Have,
as
have,
in
have you teased what the prize is?
Well, that's the thing, because you added to the pool as well, my great
Oh,
sir,
there's
and
more.
awesome contributor. But
There's
yeah,
more.
yep, there is more.
Oh,
So yeah, I mean, if you actually win, it'll be interesting to see your take on the other
I'm not.
stuff that's been added to the pool too.
No, I'm not allowed to play then.
But
All right.
man, it's been amazing, man. So again, tell them where they can find you, bro, and just again, just final words before we go.
Well, most of my F1 interactions are on Twitter, where I'm there by my name, Asaf Sagi, ASAFSAGI, all connected. Also on Instagram, but I barely post there, which is again my name, but with an underscore between Asaf and Sagi, and that's it.
Oh, you heard it from the legend, the big man himself. Asaf, bro, thank you so much, man.
I
This
just want
was
to plug one last thing,
go
and
for it.
that is your YouTube channel, because
Oh,
we're
you
on the
have
Stripping the
to.
Dipping channel, and the fine folks here surely know, but this is just in case they don't. You upload more than once a week, I think.
I try.
Am I correct? Yeah.
I try.
So lots of content on your channel. I myself admit to not see all of it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a fantastic, and the way you interact with your fans and the way you drive, and just like your presenting style is immaculate. And that's it. Just like go and follow AMG Dens on YouTube as well, and turn on the notifications.
Aw, thank you so much, man, bro. Honestly, you're one of the best things to happen to me this year, man. Like I remember, like
Ah,
our Mercedes museum trip we did earlier in the year as well, and just how fun it was as well to interact with you and for you to make that sacrifice to come over and stuff like that too,
sacrifice.
man. So,
That was
bro, like we were looking forward to it. And now that we've got Abby, we've got a couple of people, so we have obviously Quick Stop as well, which is gonna be
whoop, whoop.
amazing. It's gonna be so fun, man. So we're looking forward to bringing you to London, bringing you home, bro. We didn't bring back the World Cup, so we're gonna bring back you.
The next worst thing.
Oh,
All right.
hey,
Good night,
hey,
everyone.
thank you guys, and yeah, just like we said, make sure you slap the like button like Will Smith, and yeah, just thank you for your support throughout the year. It's been incredible. All of you guys are so incredible. We're so proud of you, and we continue to hope that we can continue to make you guys proud, give you guys the content that you want and deserve. And yeah, this was super, 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 super relieved and happy to have you guys. As always, make sure you stay tuned for future episodes. Make sure, obviously, subscribe to my channel as well. Most of you guys in here already are, so that's great. And yeah, for me and Asaf as well,
Can
we
I say
are
peace with
out.
you?
Of course. So should we do it on the count? When I get to one, we'll do it after the one. So, guys, it's been shipping the dipping, and in 3, 2, 1.
Peace.
Peace. We out. Thank you guys.